Всім добрий вечір.
On behalf of the brave, on behalf of every father and every mother who waits for freedom, on behalf of our warriors, and paves the way for a new history.
Hello and welcome to Tochnyi Weekly, the show that gets behind the headlines to discuss the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We have an excellent show for you today, pretty standard fare. If you could first, please hit the like and subscribe button. It really helps spread the word about us. Also, you can check out our Twitter and our Blue Sky. That's where we update folks on the goings-on here. We also have a website that holds most of our research, Tochnyi.info. It's a very good website, a lot of great researchers doing great work on there. So we highly recommend people check out Tochnyi.info. So this week, it's a pretty straightforward broadcast. I'll just be doing my news report like always. Mr. German Aid to Ukraine will also provide his report. And then we will do some other stuff that has happened in the meantime. All kinds of crazy things have been going on in the news since I wrote my news report. And so we'll talk a little bit about that, and then we'll do some Q&A. So if you guys in the chat have any questions, or if you're watching the broadcast after the fact, you can throw them in the comments. We do our best to take your guys' feedback into account. We like hearing your questions and doing our best to answer them. So if you could, please do, again, like and subscribe, and we'll go ahead and jump right into the news.
These are the main headlines as of May 11th, 2025. First up, we have operations. On May 7th, Ukrainian drones reportedly struck an industrial facility in Saransk, located in Russia's Mordovia Republic. The targeted site was the fiber optic systems plant, according to the independent Russian outlet Astra. The incident resulted in two separate fires within the city. One occurred at the fiber optical facility itself, and the other ignited nearby, affecting what is believed to be the Saranskabel plant. Residents in the area described hearing multiple intense blasts early in the morning centered around the city's industrial zone. Footage reviewed by Astra further confirmed that the optic fiber production site was engulfed in flames, consistent with past attacks. This particular plant is capable of producing up to 4 million kilometers of fiber annually and also services Russia's primary telecommunications companies. This is not the first time the plant has been struck. A previous drone operation on April 4th targeted this and other facilities involved in sensitive materials production. Saransk, the location of the incident, is situated 600 kilometers east of Moscow and roughly 1,000 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. Ukrainian drones carried out an aerial strike on a military-industrial facility in Krasnoarmeysk, located in Russia's Moscow region, according to video evidence circulated on the Supernova Telegram channel. The operation is reported to have targeted the production complex associated with the Basalt enterprise, a significant component of the Russian state defense apparatus. The footage captured by bystanders reveals at least 3 distinct detonations at the site, although the exact locations of impact and the full extent of structural or operational damage remain unconfirmed. Independent sources have not yet verified the outcome or scope of the incident. Basalt plays a central role in supplying Russia's armed forces across multiple branches and functions as part of the state-controlled Rostec Corporation. The facility in question is involved in every phase of the munitions supply chain, from design and fabrication to upgrades and decommissioning of military-grade ordnance. The plant itself produces a broad range of weaponry, from standard artillery and aerial explosive devices to advanced anti-armor systems such as the RPG-7, I don't know if that's advanced, RPG-29, RPG-30, and RPG-32 launchers. In addition, the company is known for manufacturing complex devices including thermobaric systems, fragmentation-based projectiles, and incendiary units designed for use by infantry. Following the release of last week's footage, Ukraine's main intelligence directorate claims responsibility for downing not one but 2 Russian Su multi-role fighter aircraft using AIM-9 Sidewinder missiles deployed from Magara-7 unmanned surface vessels. The report, detailed by The War Zone in an interview with the intelligence chief Kirill Budnov, marks what he described as an unprecedented event, the first known instance of a drone successfully engaging and destroying a manned combat aircraft using infrared-guided air-to-air missiles. The operation reportedly occurred in the Black Sea on a Friday, involving a coordinated drone assault. 3 Magara 7 units were used, and 2 of them launched missiles at the Russian aircraft. The Magara 7, described as an anti-air variant of the earlier Magara 5 model, represents a newly disclosed adaptation, although Budanov declined to reveal any technical distinctions between the two platforms. Earlier reports, including those from Ukraine's own defense ministry and Russian-aligned Telegram sources, stated that an Su-30 was downed using a modified R-73 short-range missile. A video circulated online appears to show that initial engagement. While no visual evidence has surfaced regarding the second incident, Budanov confirmed both strikes but acknowledged that imagery only exists for one of the two. Despite a declared ceasefire by Russian President Vladimir Putin to coincide with Victory Day commemorations from May 8th to 10th, Russian forces have continued full-scale offensive operations across the entire front line. Ukraine's Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha announced on social media that Moscow's so-called parade ceasefire was entirely disregarded by its own troops. Sybiha cited briefings from Ukraine's military command, described the ceasefire as a deceptive gesture with no real impact on the battlefield. Between midnight and noon on the day in question, Russian forces violated the ceasefire reportedly 734 times and launched 63 offensive operations, 23 of which were ongoing at the time of reporting. Ukrainian positions came under attack 586 times, including 464 incidents involving heavy weaponry. There were 176 FPV drone strikes and 10 air raids, deploying a total of 16 guided bombs. Ukraine is actively defending against these actions and has been documenting every breach. Sybiha emphasized that Kyiv is sharing comprehensive evidence of the violations with the United States, the European Union, and other international partners and organizations. He explained that Ukraine remains committed to the idea of a real ceasefire, proposing a 30-day halt in hostilities as a confidence-building measure that could lay the groundwork for peace talks and eventual resolution. However, he insisted that no serious progress can occur while Moscow publicly promises peace yet continues its military campaign. Up next, we have economy and aid. France has committed to producing 1,200 AASM Hammer glide bombs for Ukraine in 2025, significantly enhancing Kyiv's strike capabilities. These precision-guided munitions, which convert conventional bombs into long-range smart weapons, have already seen effective use by Ukrainian forces. The AASM Hammer, developed by Safran, is noted for its high accuracy, resistance to electronic jamming, and ability to function in GPS-denied environments, factors that make it superior to Russian equivalents like the retrofitted Fab series bombs. Glide bombs offer a cost-effective alternative to missiles, and Ukraine has adapted the French weapon for use on Soviet-era MiG and Su model jets. These bombs, costing roughly $300,000 each, have a range of about 70 kilometers and are typically launched in high-speed, low-altitude runs to avoid radar detection. Despite their shorter range compared to missiles, they are difficult to intercept and carry significant destructive power. Ukraine has employed them against command posts, artillery, logistics hubs, and fortified positions, often releasing videos showing successful strikes. France plans to deliver around 50 of these bombs per month, helping Ukraine maintain pressure on Russian forces along the front. Ukraine and the Netherlands have formalized a new level of cooperation focused on protecting critical infrastructure through the signing of a Memorandum of Understanding. The agreement was concluded between Ukraine's State Service for Special Communications and Information Protection and the Dutch Ministry of Justice and Security. According to a statement from Ukraine's communications agency, this partnership represents an expansion of the long-standing support the Netherlands has offered Ukraine since the start of the ongoing invasion. The memorandum builds on the broader security cooperation agreement signed by the two nations in March of 2024 and is intended to facilitate joint initiatives, knowledge exchange, and the strengthening of protective frameworks for vital state systems under persistent and complex threats. On May 9th, the UK unveiled its most extensive sanctions effort to date against Russia's shadow fleet. The newly announced measures target 100 such vessels that have collectively transported over $24 billion in oil since 2024. In addition to the fleet, the UK has imposed penalties on other ships believed to be facilitating Russian state interests, along with multiple individuals and organizations tied to Russia's energy and finance sectors. The announcement was made during the Joint Expeditionary Force Summit in Oslo, where leaders of the 10-nation Northern European Coalition convened. The JEF, led by the UK, previously established a surveillance system in January to monitor suspect maritime traffic and protect submarine telecommunications and energy infrastructure. The initiative followed the incidents of unexplained damage to underwater cables in the Baltic Sea. The Joint Expeditionary Force is also working to strengthen its cooperation with Ukraine, offering training and assistance in managing information warfare while integrating battlefield insights gained by Ukrainian forces into its own broader strategic planning. The European Commission has formalized an agreement with multiple EU member states to allocate €1 billion from the windfall profits generated by frozen Russian financial assets to strengthen Ukraine's defense sector. The funding will be used to scale up production of essential defense equipment, including drones, munitions, and other urgently needed military hardware. Umerov noted that the initiative marks not only an operational enhancement for Ukrainian defense forces, but also a strategic investment in building domestic production capacity, moving Ukraine toward greater self-sufficiency in defense manufacturing. Umerov expressed appreciation for the European Union and its member states, citing their continued support and leadership in backing Ukraine's efforts to defend itself and uphold security across Europe. The EU has previously pledged around $1.9 billion in additional military support, further enhancing Ukraine's access to weapons for self-defense. On May 9th, President Volodymyr Zelenskyy enacted a new round of sanctions targeting individuals and entities connected to Russia's war effort, as detailed in a resolution by Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council. It's interesting everyone sanctioned Russia on May 9th. I wonder why. The measure covers 58 individuals and 74 companies, the majority of which are Russian firms involved in military technology. The decree took effect immediately upon publication. Among those sanctioned are cultural and business figures who publicly endorse Russia's actions in Ukraine, as well as executives involved in the defense supply chain. This move follows earlier sanctions announced on May 1st, which include figures such as the former presidential advisor Alexei Arestovich, blogger Miroslav Oleshko, political commentator Konstantin Bodarenko, and Dmitro Vasilets, the former leader of the outlawed Derzheva party. Several major Russian enterprises were also targeted, including Novolipetsk Steel, Novatek, Arctic LNG, Stoylensky Mining and Processing Plant, Volzhsky Abrasive Works, and the Magnitogorsk Electrode Plant. Entities based in China, Iran, and Uzbekistan were also included in the latest sanctions package. Ukraine and the United States have advanced a key bilateral initiative with the ratification of an agreement establishing the U.S.-Ukraine Reconstruction Investment Fund, a major component of a broader minerals cooperation framework. Approved by Ukraine's parliament on May 8th, the ratified deal enables the finalization of related agreements, which are expected to be signed as early as next week, according to Ukrainian officials. The fund aims to support Ukraine's defense industrial development and post-war recovery, with a specific focus on critical mineral resources. Ukrainian First Deputy Prime Minister and Economy Minister Yulia Sverdenko indicated that all remaining formalities would likely be completed within days and noted the United States' clear interest in making the fund operational without delay. Deputy Economy Minister and Trade Representative Taras Kachka highlighted that the ratification grants the government authority to sign associated agreements and described the parliamentary vote as a reflection of lawmakers' trust in the government's approach. He noted that further communication with the public and legislators on the fund's implementation will follow. The agreement was signed in Washington on April 30th and will formally take effect after both sides complete the required diplomatic steps. Ukrainian lawmakers overwhelmingly supported the ratification, with 338 votes in favor. The document includes provisions for joint management of the investment fund and outlines shared control over its operations and resources. It also establishes clear terms for revenue use and mineral access, which legal experts have praised as favorable for Ukraine. The legal analyst Anna Bukvich, representing the Ukrainian Bar Association's International Law Committee and currently based in Luxembourg, emphasized that the agreement avoids clauses that could negatively impact Ukraine's financial or legal standing. She clarified that income from existing mineral licenses is excluded from the agreement, meaning that Ukraine retains full budgetary control over current operations. Only revenues from new mineral deposits will be used to replenish the fund. Bukvich also noted that while the United States will have prioritized access to investment opportunities, the agreement does not grant unilateral control over licensing or fund governance. All significant decisions, including changes of the list of targeted mineral sites, require mutual consent. She reiterated that subsoil rights remain with Ukraine and that the agreement respects Ukraine's sovereign authority in all key areas. However, Bukvich cautioned that while the main agreement presents no current legal risk to Ukraine's autonomy, the forthcoming technical documents needed to govern the practical functioning of the fund could introduce more complex considerations. These documents will define mechanisms for dispute resolution, investment procedures, and oversight, and may significantly shape the fund's long-term impact. Overall, Ukrainian analysts appear to believe the agreement is a strategic step toward reinforcing Ukraine's economic independence, securing investment in vital sectors, and strengthening ties with a key international ally. As the fund's operational details are finalized, both governments are expected to move quickly to implement the framework and begin joint mineral development under the new investment structure. Iran is reportedly preparing to send launchers for its Fateh 360 short-range ballistic missiles to Russia, a move that could enhance Moscow's ability to carry out tactical strikes in its ongoing military campaign against Ukraine. According to information from 2 Western security officials and 1 regional source cited by Reuters, the transfer of these systems is expected to happen soon. The Fateh 360 missiles have a range of up to 120 kilometers and are designed for rapid deployment against enemy positions, military infrastructure, and nearby populated areas. While Iran has previously delivered such missiles, reportedly via 9 Russian-flagged ships in September of 2024, those shipments did not include the associated launchers. If the launch systems are delivered, this would mark a further deepening of military ties between Tehran and Moscow. U.S. Army General Christopher Cavoli, and I think he's the commander of U.S. forces in Europe, recently informed Congress that over 400 Iranian short-range ballistic missiles have already been provided to Russia, likely including the Fateh 360 variant. However, there is no confirmed public evidence that these weapons have yet been actively used in combat, nor have there been any signs of Iran providing other types of similar missiles. Defense analysts say that deploying the Fateh 360 would allow Russia to conserve its more advanced missile systems, such as the Iskander, for longer-range operations targeting strategic infrastructure, including the energy sector. This would in turn place additional strain on Ukraine's air defense network. The Fateh 360 is considered a particularly valuable asset due to its quick setup and launch capabilities, as well as its minimal logistical demands. Military experts note that the system is designed for ease of use, requiring limited specialized training for personnel to operate it effectively. The price of Russian oil has dropped sharply, falling below 4,000 rubles, approximately $49 per barrel, the lowest level recorded in the past 2 years. This figure is significantly below both the target set in Russia's federal budget and the revised forecast used for tax assessments. Despite the substantial decline in their budget, the Russian government has raised its defense spending for 2025 by 25%, reaching 6.3% of the country's GDP, marking the highest level of military expenditure since the Cold War. Economists suggest that maintaining this level of military spending amid falling oil revenues will likely require the Kremlin to implement difficult fiscal adjustments. These may include raising taxes, cutting back on social programs, and increasing domestic borrowing in order to stabilize public finances without reducing defense allocations. The drop in Russian oil prices is part of a broader decline in global energy markets. Oil prices have fallen by more than 20% since April, amid growing concerns that global supply is set to exceed demand. Market uncertainty has been fueled by statements from U.S. President Donald Trump regarding possible new trade tariffs, raising fears of a global economic slowdown. The decision by OPEC, including Russia, to ramp up production has also exerted further downward pressure on prices. In light of the weakening energy market, Russia has revised its 2025 budget deficit projection upward from 0.5% to 1.7% of GDP. This revision follows a 24% cut in the country's forecasted energy revenue, reflecting expectations of a prolonged period of low oil prices. Energy exports remain a key pillar of Russia's economy, accounting for roughly 1/3 of government income. Russia is nearing completion of a major explosives manufacturing facility in Siberia, located roughly 3,000 kilometers from Ukraine, as part of an effort to scale up domestic ammunition production amid its ongoing military operations. A Reuters investigation identified the site as the Bisk Oleum plant, operated by the Ya-M Sverdla state-owned enterprise, a key state supplier of military-grade explosives. While the plant has not previously produced certain high-energy materials, available documents and procurement records suggest that the production of RDX, also known as hexogen, is being established. RDX is a potent explosive widely used in military munitions. Chemical precursors such as urotropine and nitric acid, mentioned in the planning documents, further support the conclusion that both RDX and potentially HMX, another high-performance explosive, are part of the production scope of the factory. A key detail is the use of the official production code GOST-RV 1376, which directly corresponds to RDX. Although this compound has civilian applications in sectors like mining, the role of the Ministry of Defense in coordinating the project, combined with the plant's association with an existing defense enterprise, signals that the primary purpose is military. According to a now-removed contract post on a government procurement website, the facility is expected to produce up to 6,000 tons of explosives annually. This capacity would be sufficient to manufacture approximately 1.2 million 152mm artillery shells. The construction effort has been rapid and heavily resourced. The Russian government allocated 15.5 billion rubles, approximately $189 million from a special emergency fund. Groundwork began in 2023 and includes the refurbishment or construction of at least 20 separate structures, such as storage warehouses, protected tunnels, blast containment systems, and the extension of local rail infrastructure. Up next, we have international relations. Ukraine has ordered 2 Hungarian diplomats to leave its territory within 48 hours in direct response to Hungary's earlier expulsion of 2 Ukrainian diplomats from Budapest, whom Hungary accused of engaging in intelligence activities. Ukrainian Minister Andriy Sybiha confirmed the decision publicly, stating that the Hungarian ambassador had been summoned and officially notified. Ukrainian officials say the move is grounded in the principle of reciprocity and national interest. The diplomatic escalation comes after Hungary's foreign minister announced the expulsion of Ukrainian diplomats for allegedly conducting espionage while assigned to the embassy in Budapest. This recent tit-for-tat exchange follows recent revelations by Ukraine's security service, the SBU, which claimed to have dismantled a Hungarian military intelligence network operating inside Ukraine. So see, it goes 3 layers deep of responses. In response to the SBU's actions, the Hungarian government issued a sharply worded statement accusing Kyiv of siding with Hungary's domestic opposition. Officials in Budapest expressed alarm over what they described as the unprecedented involvement of a neighboring country's intelligence service with a rival political faction, referring to Ukraine's alleged ties with Hungary's TISA party, a key opponent of Prime Minister Viktor Orban's ruling bloc in the lead-up to the 2026 elections. The SBU reported the detention of at least 2 individuals suspected of working with Hungarian intelligence. One is a 40-year-old former serviceman from western Ukraine who was reportedly recruited in 2021. His assignments allegedly included gathering intelligence on local sentiment, military positions, law enforcement capacity, and potential reactions to any hypothetical deployment of Hungarian peacekeepers in the Transcarpathian region. The second suspect is a former female service member of the Ukrainian Defense Forces who resigned earlier this year. According to investigators, she supplied information about aircraft, helicopters, and defensive infrastructure related to her former unit in Transcarpathia. Both suspects have been detained by the Ukrainian authorities and are being held without the possibility of bail, pending further legal proceedings. Russia and Ukraine have completed their 5th prisoner exchange of the year, with each side returning 205 captured soldiers, according to official statements released on Tuesday. The swap was facilitated with the assistance of the UAE, which played a mediating role in the negotiations. Russia's defense ministry confirmed the return of its servicemen, noting that they are currently undergoing medical and psychological evaluations in Belarus. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy also confirmed the exchange on social media, posting images of released Ukrainian soldiers draped in national flags. He emphasized the emotional significance of their return, noting the freed personnel included individuals from across various branches of the military and from different parts of the front, including some who had defended Mariupol. Zelenskyy stated that the soldiers had been held across numerous locations in Russia and subjected to harsh conditions aimed at breaking their will and undermining their identity. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has called for the immediate implementation of a full and unconditional 30-day ceasefire in Ukraine, emphasizing that there must be no preconditions to the agreement. Speaking on behalf of the Coalition of the Willing, she warned that future failure to observe ceasefires would lead to the imposition of harsher sanctions against Russia. Her remarks, shared on social media and reported by Ukrinform, stressed that the ceasefire is essential to create space for genuine peace negotiations, and the responsibility now lies with Moscow to respond appropriately. European Council President Antonio Costa also echoed this position, affirming the coalition's collective support for the ceasefire initiative, which is backed by countries across Europe as well as partners like Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Costa also stated that the EU would continue to provide military and security support for Ukraine using available EU mechanisms to maintain its defensive posture. Earlier on the same day, key European leaders, including French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, arrived in Kyiv for discussions focused on peace efforts. And last item this week, Chinese leader Xi Jinping visited Moscow on May 8th to attend Russia's Victory Day commemorations on the 9th, but his trip also featured a significant high-level meeting with leader Vladimir Putin. During their talks, both leaders reaffirmed their strategic alignment and issued a joint statement signaling closer cooperation across multiple sectors, including military, economic, and geopolitical arenas. The joint declaration framed the war in Ukraine as a war rooted in the so-called underlying causes, echoing narratives frequently used by the Kremlin to justify its invasion. These include claims about NATO expansion and alleged discrimination against Russian-speaking communities and cultural suppression in Ukraine. Xi's endorsement of this position marks a clear alignment with Russia's framing of the war, offering a diplomatic and political boost for Moscow at a time of mounting pressure from Western governments. She described the Russia-China partnership as one forged through enduring trials, using language that emphasized deep mutual trust and shared purpose. Both leaders pledged to intensify coordination and to push back against what they called Washington's strategy of dual containment targeting both countries. They committed to personally overseeing key aspects of cooperation and outlined plans to significantly increase trade and investment by 2030. This meeting reinforces the strategic bond between the two powers, which has only deepened since the declared no-limits partnership in February of 2022, just weeks before Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Since then, China has played a critical role in helping Russia withstand the effects of Western sanctions, remaining its top trading partner and a major economic lifeline. Xi's visit coincided with Victory Day events in Moscow, commemorating the Soviet Union's role in defeating Germany in World War II. Chinese military personnel are participating in the parade, with Putin noting that the Chinese contingent is the largest among all foreign formations. And if you want to know more about what happened in the run-up to Russia's Victory Day parade, I made a little video about it that we published on Wednesday in Tochnyi Updates, so check it out if you missed it. And with that, we've reached the conclusion of my news report recapping the main events for this week. We will now move to the next segment.
Yeah, that would be me. Sorry, presentation already started. Hello, guys. As always, I will now present this week's most important news from Germany regarding Ukraine. Let me just shift to the side. Yeah, that looks better. We're starting with a New York Times report in which 4 former and current US officials are being cited. According to the report, Western allies are discussing the possibility of supplying an additional Patriot fire unit from Germany to Ukraine. I personally thought about it, also wrote an article, a very detailed article about it, and I think it's very likely, or at least likely, that it actually could happen. This would be the 4th delivery of a full fire unit from Germany to Ukraine. German officials have, however, not yet commented on the report, and due to the new and, in my opinion, very ignorant policy, likely won't do so in the future. Next up is a donation by the University of Kassel. The German university has donated a fully functional combined heat and power plant to a hospital in an unnamed town in western Ukraine. According to the University of Kassel, it is still fully operational and, with proper maintenance, can continue to reliably supply energy for many years. Jesus, what's happening today? The currently ongoing transport to Ukraine is being financed by the Hessian Ministry of the Interior for Security and Homeland Defense. On Thursday, it became known that a larger humanitarian donation reached the State Emergency Service of Ukraine in Kyiv. Sets of clothing, fire helmets, belts, shoes, and more were provided by the Volunteer Fire Brigade in Delbrück in Germany. Normally, I would end the bit here, but I would like to point out something else special. The head of the Delbrück Volunteer Fire Brigade, Johannes Grothoff, only retired in April 2025 after 41 years of service. A colleague from Ukraine was also present at his farewell, where he paid tribute to him for his work and honored him with one of Ukraine's highest orders of merit for service to Ukraine over the past years. Reportedly, only 10 persons received this specific order of merit. And last but not least, the New York Times with another report about German assistance. They reported with reference to a US congressional source that the USA has authorized the transfer of 125 long-range artillery rockets for Mars 2 and HIMARS, etc., and 100 Patriot interceptors from Germany to Ukraine. Only recently, at a meeting in Brussels, Minister of Defense Boris Pistorius announced that 30 Patriot missiles from Bundeswehr stocks would be made available to Ukraine at short notice. It is therefore unclear if the report is true, if now 130 Patriot interceptors will be delivered, or if it's just 70 additional ones. And yeah, that's it for my segment. So back to you, Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Germany to Ukraine. So this next segment I used to call Extra Bits, but Germany to Ukraine rightly pointed out it's more stuff I wanted to talk about. That's probably a more accurate title for it. So I guess that's what we'll call it for now. So stuff I wanted to talk about this week that I didn't talk about in the news. The first is this little Kadyrov retirement rumor. Sorry, I should have sent you a link there, Erlend. I'll send it to you right now. Just something you can throw up on screen. So if you guys were paying attention this week to the news about what's going on in Russia, there was like a bunch of stories in the Western media that was like, Kadyrov says he's going to resign as the dictator of Chechnya, and people were like, what will a post-Kadyrov Chechnya look like? And like all these, I don't know, it's like a huge story. And he's done this so many times. Like, this is an act of what I would call performative autocracy. Since 2014, Kadyrov has been saying, oh, I'm going to resign. And then it's either a move directly to Putin. It's like a power move where he's like threatening Putin, as Putin says, like, no, you can't resign. Or it's just like his followers have to go, oh, no, please don't resign. You're the best, right? And he's done this, as I'm aware of, at least 3 times. He's probably done it like more times than anyone can count, honestly. And it doesn't mean he's resigning. It's like a power move he does, almost every year. So the fact that the Western media once again just ran with this and people were talking about Kadyrov resigning just bothers me. And I would just urge people, if you're trying to learn about what's going on in the Caucasus, general media sources don't really know what's going on, and they're kind of dumb. And so you need to go to area experts, people who actually follow it. I don't know. There's a couple of Twitter accounts I follow. I can try to find them and put them in the description later. But the point is, you should go to people who aren't like just randomly clicking on it because it's in the headlines one week. You should go to people who follow it regularly and have been around the block a few times and don't get hoodwinked by this clown, because it's ridiculous that anyone in any legitimate media source is talking about that this guy's actually resigning. Okay, rant over, unless anyone wants to add anything about this Kadyrov nonsense. Yeah, didn't think so. Sound pretty crazy, I'm sure. Okay, so the next topic is the new Pope. I just wanted to very quickly mention that the new Pope has been elected. He's of course an American. It's all a big story. It's its own thing. It doesn't need any traction from us, obviously. But obviously the Pope made some comments about Ukraine and in the past, and they were positive. So some people misquoted it or represented it as being more recent than it was. It was back in 2022. But the comments are still the same, and they're very positive towards Ukraine and very, I would say, like truthful about what's going on with Russia. That it's like doing an imperialist act to conquer land for power and all that. So yeah, it's a positive sign. That the previous Pope, I would say, wasn't the most in favor of the current international order in Ukraine. He was saying things like, the Russians are trying to he went to Russia and was like, they're trying to take your identity away. And, he said kind of weird stuff like that. So obviously I'm not someone whose opinion on the Pope matters too much. And, Catholicism's a big place. I'm not here to say like, the Pope's this big, important guy or anything like that. But it's nice to have, I guess, one more person, I would say, in the information space who's significant, like a Pope. That might be able to say a few things that is at least not actively working against the cause of a just settlement to what's going on in Ukraine. So I don't know. Anyone else want to add anything about Mr. New Pope in Ukraine?
Well, I think you nailed it, but I want to add that I think unless this Pope wants to make his papacy about Ukraine, it's going to take enormous effort to correct the previous Pope's stance on the war in Ukraine, because he made very big damage, especially in amongst Catholics that are very dedicated to the whole Pope thing. Unfortunately, so yeah, I wouldn't take too much into this unless we'll see some pretty big statements from him now, because his speech at the inauguration ceremony thing definitely was more positive than the previous Pope, but it wasn't like very, very powerful words or anything like this. So we'll see.
Yeah, so I would say at a minimum we've got a less hostile pope, but we're crossing our fingers that we might have a pope ally in all this. But we'll see. Obviously, it's it's still early days, so we'll see in the future. And then that brings us, of course, to the big thing I wanted to talk about this week. Immediately after I wrote the news, at like 1 a.m. in Russia, for no reason. Well, I shouldn't say for no reason, but Putin obviously had the whole victory day, and then like Europe did a thing, which was I put in the news, which was they demanded a 30-day ceasefire and said no more futzing around. And he did a big press conference, and he tried to make it sound like a big deal. And we all watched it at the time, and we were like, "This isn't a big deal. He's just whining some more and refusing to do a ceasefire." So the obvious answer then would be to tell him, "You didn't agree to the ceasefire, Bucko. That's that we're pulling the trigger on all the stuff we said we'd do, and we're going to follow through on all our threats." But of course, today we found out that's not really what happened. What appears to have happened is that Zelenskyy has agreed, either from his own initiative or from discussing with his European colleagues and American colleagues. He's going to go to Turkey himself, and he said he's going to wait for Putin there personally. And so it appears that we're still playing the game of Europe and Ukraine playing along, arguably for the benefit or the to an audience of the United States, to show that they're not the ones who are blocking the peace efforts, that it's in fact Russia who is blocking the peace efforts, because there's this hope that once that the US, or I should say the Trump administration in particular, kind of understands that they will start dealing with this more rationally. And I think a lot of us are worried that we've passed that point. It's pretty obvious that they're either not going to, or that we're taking too much time and getting taken advantage of. But that seems to be the strategy that's being adopted here, and we can maybe discuss a little bit what's going on. So I guess first, if anyone has any, obviously I'm not the person who frames the universe. So if you guys have any thing you wanted to correct me on or anything like that, or have a different take on anything, feel free to jump in.
Well, I mean, there's so many different directions you can talk about. Like to me, the most frustrating thing is that I think like in December, Russia was in a pretty bad spot in terms of like almost everything. And this whole process, like it kind of began at the end of last year and has rolled up till now. This whole process has revitalized a lot of the back end things that are powering Russia's war machine. And it's brought a lot of Russians into the military. It's brought a lot of foreign investments into Russia. And no matter how you cut it, it's been really bad for everyone except Russia. And it's so frustrating that the leadership has decided to go down this path. I think that they believe that what they're doing will lead to Trump flipping on Russia and becoming more pro-Ukraine. And that might be true. But the net effect is we probably just extended the war by a year at least. And we're condemning tens of thousands of people, if not 100,000, to death because of this. And we've made Russia stronger. So it's incredibly frustrating. I think there were a lot of other ways we could have handled everything going on right now. I wish Europe were more assertive. I think you could have handled Trump better by being assertive, because Trump responds to strength a lot better than these passive moves. But here we are. So I suspect any agreement that Putin wants to put forward, or anything that he says, is going to be intentional sabotage to destroy the talks. He's going to say I have no doubt in my mind that right now Russia is doing everything they can to enter Dnipropetrovsk Oblast because they're pretty close already. They're going to try to enter it before these talks and try to capture maybe a town. And then Russia is going to start the process of officially annexing the whole oblast. And they're going to say, see, before we would have accepted just 4 oblasts or whatever, and now we own another one. So that's the trap we're falling into. It's so stupid and it's so frustrating.
Yeah, I think the whole messaging is incredibly unfortunate. And I talked a little bit with Andrew earlier about this, and I tend to agree that Ukraine really needs strong messaging from Europe, and they never seem to get exactly what they need. They get this really weak positioning from Europe, especially the communication that we get publicly, and maybe they're saying other things to Zelenskyy, but oh my god, like why are we still at this 3 years, 4th year of the war? Why can't they just say Russia needs to get out? That's it. No more discussion. I don't see why that is a problem, but unfortunately these people either are not strong enough politically to say what is needed to be said, or they're just scared. I don't get it, but here we are.
Yeah, and these statements make a really big difference, and the messaging makes a huge difference. So I think a lot of these politicians, I think they're jaded. I think the way they view the world is through this like really abstract lens where they see that like you can lie, you can say whatever you want or whatever, and it doesn't matter. What matters is like what actually happens. But that's not true. Like these statements, like when you make these statements to the public, it has actual impact. So like when Trump says things, it directly leads to recruitment in Russia. And when Europe is refusing to back Ukraine, or they issue these ambiguous, wishy-washy statements, that's impacting Ukrainian recruitment. It's negatively impacting it. Fewer people are signing up because of it. And Ukraine needs those soldiers. These statements are boosting Russian morale and weakening Ukrainian morale when Ukraine's our ally. We're doing like everything in our power to crush our ally and empower our enemy. It makes no sense. This messaging is part of the war. And our messengers, our leaders, refuse to accept that. And they're not taking responsibility for it. They're viewing it through this lens of anything we do to get where we want to be is good. So like what they want is to convince Trump to do something, and they are willing to use whatever lies and manipulations it takes to get him to do that. But all of those lies have real world consequences. And I wish that they would just accept that and maybe reframe the way that they do things. It doesn't even have to be big adjustments. It can be just little adjustments. Just throwing the people a bone every once in a while, so it's not 100% in one way. See, like not even Trump is 100% in one way. Like he will flip and flop back and forth, where he's 90% saying one thing and 10% saying the other thing. He's throwing those people, treats to keep them, interested over time. Whereas the other leaders like Stormer and the Crown and all them, they don't do that. They're dead set on one messaging, and they never do the opposite side to keep those people interested. And it's to our own detriment.
Yeah, messaging is really important, and sometimes it can have surprising effects. Like the meeting in the Oval Office, the absolute horrendous meeting there, did have some positive effect in Ukraine, but it was more of this like angry reaction, like fuck this, we need to get our shit together. And it had a little positive recruitment swing by that. But that's a very special case, and you won't have that repeatedly happening, unfortunately. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think you made two very good points, Andrew. The first being the issue of like morale, right? This is a war that's gone on for 4 years. It really does come down to a certain degree, like which society can withstand this longer, right? And all of these moves have very real consequences in that dimension. And I think you're totally right about that. And the other thing you said, which is like Trump respects strength, right? And I think that's generally true. Obviously, everyone's got their take on like what's going on in Trump's head and what it all means and all that. But it seems to me, generally speaking, that Trump doesn't believe that Europe is, quote unquote, strong. Like if you're either a corner that the mafia works on or a mafia gang, he sees Russia as a mafia gang and Europe as the street corner, right? Like they're victims there to be taken advantage of by either the US or Russia. They're not their own force to be reckoned with. And anything that Europe does that isn't asserting some level of like, no, we are actually a giant economy and we have a lot of military power and we're willing to use it. Anything that they do that doesn't assert that, I don't think is going to really change Trump's general like approach or view of the world, right? It's probably going to be hard to change it in general, but the strategy right now appears to be try to become Trump's friend. And I don't think they've taken away from what Trump has done and the way he thinks the correct answer, which is you don't need to try to become Trump's friend. Like you need to become powerful enough that Trump respects you as maybe not an equal, but like at least a player in the game and not just victims, right? That seems to be the problem, the fundamental disconnect between Europe and the Trump administration, I should say. I don't know, but I thought that those are good points, Andrew, if you wanted to respond to anything I said.
Yeah, and you see that the response has been, Russia wanted to negotiate with the US. That failed, apparently. And now they want to negotiate with Turkey. They skipped Europe. Europe is not even a player. They're not even involved.
Yeah.
Right?
And ironically, Russia asked the US to do things with Europe. They were like, please make Europe sell gas for us again. Please get Europe to lift SWIFT. So it's very clear they have leverage if they're willing to use it. Sorry, go ahead.
But yeah, sorry. It's just that Europe has removed themselves from the conversation. And they didn't have to be this way. It shouldn't have been this way. But it's what them doing everything they can to manipulate Trump has resulted in them getting removed from the being a serious contender in the conversation. So what do you do at that point? Like, in my opinion, Europe should become stronger, and they have the power. It just takes the political will to assert, but I just don't feel they're ever going to actually do that. They want the US to change its mind and go back to leading. And even if the US changed its mind, why would you want Trump to be the one leading? It's crazy.
And then I guess Zelenskyy is trying to counter. Well, Zelenskyy obviously knows that this messaging is bad, and he's trying to counter this, and came with a statement just about an hour and a half ago, which I think is very interesting and surprising in a way. But I guess that's what they're trying, surprise the West, surprise the Russians, and end up at least limiting the damage that this statement from certain European leaders have brought. What do you guys think about the statement about meeting or being ready to meet Putin in Turkey?
I mean, I
means.
guess they don't lose it. Zelenskyy doesn't lose anything by going and playing and continuing to play along, unless obviously there's some crap going on with the ceasefire line or whatever. But like, you know, if there was no ceasefire, if he's in Turkey or not in Turkey, I guess it doesn't ultimately matter. But to me, it seems like the problem here is that Europe very clearly just said, like, they issued a joint. They all went to a single place, all their leaders, and they had a meeting with Zelenskyy there. And they said, here's our statement. And the statement said unequivocally, you need to agree, nothing else. We're not talking anymore. You need to agree to a ceasefire, yes or no, right now, or bad things are going to happen to Russia. And then Putin came out and said a bunch of garbage and didn't say, yes, I agree to the ceasefire. He didn't respond to their ultimatum in a way that reflects that he assented. And that should have triggered for Europe a response, period, in my opinion, right? That's what's at issue here. Obviously, I think Zelensky's playing the hand as best he can. And I mean, I guess as far as Europe's strategy goes, like Andrew was saying, it doesn't look like it costs them anything to play this game, to keep playing this game. But the problem is that they've gotten in the mindset that this is what the game is about, that the game is about manipulating Trump. And quite frankly, Russia's doing a better job at that right now. And they need to make the game about something else, which is, you know, Europe helping Ukraine and not listening to the United States. And then Russia, that would really flip the script on Russia. And I don't think they would know what to do. But right now, it seems like Russia kind of knows what to do, which is basically exhaust everyone with this garbage. And eventually we'll all just kind of lose interest and they'll go back to what they were doing, like Erlend was saying, and just start seizing, or Andrew was saying, sorry, seizing Dnipro and sort of, you know, laughing maniacally as they talk about peace, basically.
Yeah, I expect the Russians to have further maximalist goals to exploit what they will obviously perceive this as weakness, and that's incredibly unfortunate.
Yeah, so it's kind of, I don't know, kind of depressing, but it's hard
The
to...
flip side here is the primary reason we're even in this situation is because the war is going so badly for Russia. And they're really kind of running out of time. Their economy is bad. Their military situation, they're flush with people, but those people are not necessarily useful soldiers. And that's in large part due to the way Russia is fighting at the moment, which is involving assaults that have almost 0% chance of survival. So they're taking people and doing these mass attacks where you go into it knowing you're not going to come out of it. And you can only find so many people willing to do that. Like, honestly, like, it's shocking they can find as many as they've had already. But when you read through like what the Russian sources are saying, that it's like, in one hand, Russia is recruiting enormous numbers of people. Like, it's like, like 30 or 40,000 a month or whatever, right? So in one hand, they're recruiting tons of people. But on the other hand, they have a chronic shortage of infantry in basically every unit. And you have to, how do you square that away? Like, how do they have an excess of like 10 or 15,000 people a month over their losses, but also a chronic shortage? So there's a few different ways you could try to make sense of that. Like, in one way, they could be using that excess infantry to do something else, like building another army or whatever. And the other way of looking at it is that excess infantry is the number of people who are refusing to jump on a motorcycle and do an assault that they know they will have a 0% chance to survive. So at some point, I imagine they're going to run out of these guys who know they're not going to survive, and they're going to have to pivot to a military strategy that doesn't have a 0% survival rate. And when that happens, this whole thing that they have, where, you know, we advance a kilometer a day or whatever, and their way of thinking, that's not going to happen anymore because they're going to have to plan out more sophisticated assaults that don't result in everyone, getting exploded. So their whole military strategy will have to change. And also once that happens, they've lost all of their most aggressive assault infantry. And if you follow any sort of military conflict, you know that, like, I don't know, a small fraction of any attack, a small fraction of the infantry are doing all the work, and everybody else is just kind of following along typically. And all those people are getting wiped out, so you're just gonna have the followers left over. So I don't know, like, it's just long story short, Russia's in a really bad situation, like really, really, really bad, and they need this war to end. And then you get to the other side is they can't end the war because of their economic problems, and they have social problems as well as that stem from those economic problems. So they're kind of afraid of bringing home 1 million soldiers who will have PTSD and are rather upset and poor. So it's a huge quagmire that can't be simplified so easily. So how can they agree to a ceasefire, and how can they reject the ceasefire? Like, what does Russia even do at this point? How can they go forward? What path do they have? I don't see any path. I don't like anything. Any choice they make is wrong at this point. So Russia's in a really bad situation, and Ukraine is in a better situation than it looks like. And that's why it's so unfortunate that all the politicians are acting this way.
One situation that the Russians really, really would want to avoid is having the Kadyrovites return back to Chechnya. I think that would be very dangerous. Those people have been in some of the most really bad situations in Kursk for the last 9 months. Well, right now they may have a break, but I don't think they're going to cope well with coming back and not being in an area where they can do basically whatever they want and command, people around and do stuff that is terrible to other human beings. That kind of social problem is something the Russians really would want to avoid, I guess, back in Russia.
Yeah, and we have our analyst Stanimir, who basically just follows local Russian economic and like government news like a lot. That's what he does, and he's pretty confident that the wheels are in pretty bad shape. I wouldn't say they're coming off yet, but the situation domestically is like unsustainable. That businesses are declaring bankruptcy, local municipalities aren't able to fund basic services. Things are quite bad. And then, as I mentioned in the news report, the price of oil is basically kneecapping them really badly. And so, as Andrew said, the military situation for Russia is not as rosy as it appears, and the economic situation is quite bad as well. And so, I would guess, based on all that they are genuinely trying to come up with a way to end this, just because. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, it was crazy to even do this, if you ask me. But it seems to me, based on the fact that it is absolutely, definitely unsustainable, that they are trying to come up with a way to end this, but they are being they don't have a real strategy to do it because, as Andrew said, they have put themselves in quicksand, but they're trying to tactically do as much as they can to basically put themselves in a situation where they have the most stuff, and then also like weaken the integrity of the peace agreement so much that they're in a position in the future to act more assertively. I think that's maybe the situation they're in right now. Do you agree, Andrew, or no?
Yeah, I mean, if you just want to stick to the current frontline military thing, the way Russia is attacking, the things that they're capturing, you really have to put capture in quotes, because a lot of these areas have no supply lines, no supply network at all. So in the long run, they're indefensible positions, especially in the past 2 weeks, where you see in the news that they've advanced a lot to the west of New York. That advance in particular is totally unsustainable due to lack of supply roads and any sort of supply line whatsoever. Although the attack is supporting another supply line it's complicated. But anyways, this line, like these attacks, they're moving forward on motorcycles and going into a basement. There's no real way that they can drive like a truck up and give out ammo and food and supplies and stuff. They're having to just drive forward these motorcycles, and each time they do, like something like 3/4 of the attempts, they don't even survive to the front line, like to their front line. And then once they reach their front line, they then have to cross multiple kilometers of gray area to get where these guys are. So most of the time, they don't even reach their own front line, let alone cross that gray area. And then once they cross the gray area, they almost never come back. It's like a one-way road. So these supply lines and the way that they're advancing and the directions they're advancing, like the paths and the roads that they're taking, they're not sustainable in the long run. And in an attritional war, I believe Russia would eventually lose all of these new positions they're capturing over the course of maybe 6 to 9 months. Ukraine will shut down whatever tiny amount of logistical support that they have already and slowly chip back and recapture everything. But this is a long process. Okay, Ukraine doesn't have the strength to do one giant counterattack and take everything back in like 2 days. It's gonna be a multi-month process. And that's for every single one of these locations. So we're talking like maybe in a year or two, Ukraine will reverse all of these advances. And in the process, Russia will advance in other places, and then it'll take like a year to push those back. And it's this kind of cat and mouse game where Russia doesn't appear to be solidly capturing anything. They're just advancing for the sake of advancing without thinking through like a more sophisticated strategy of like, how can we support this? How can we build out supply roads? Like, do we have to build roads from scratch, or can we use pre-made roads? Or like, they're not thinking this stuff out. They're just attacking and going as far as possible, as quickly as possible. So in this war, Russia is using all of their assets to advance as quickly as possible. And the way Ukraine wins is patience. Long-term patience. It's going to take probably 2 years. And Russia's banking on everyone losing interest in that time period. Because if you force Russia to actually defend the areas that they're capturing right now, and I mean like, when I say right now, I mean like the past like year. Before that, like if you go back to like a year and a half, 2 years ago, Russia fought very differently. I mean like now, like just like this winter up till now is the best example. So Russia none of this is sustainable, and it's not firmly captured in my opinion. So Ukraine just needs the time to do this attritional warfare. And it seems that everyone is dead set on denying them that time. And this is playing right into Russia's hands, right into their strategy. Because at the end of the day, once Ukraine starts, once they successfully attrit Russia to the point where they're taking back this ground, which I think is inevitable, I'm not sure Russia will be able to stop them from continuing to advance. Because we're going to have a Russian military that's going to have little to no armor. They're going to be fighting mostly on motorcycles and Ladas, on four-wheelers and golf carts and stuff. And they're going to be going up against a Ukrainian military that still has armor, that still has heavy equipment left in reserve. So I'm just not sure whether Russia will be able to stop Ukraine once they start. And this is the sort of like this is the most frustrating part to me personally, is watching this unfold. What is going to happen is so obvious. It's so obvious what's going to happen to Russia if this goes on. And everyone seems intent on cutting off Ukraine before they're allowed to reap the rewards of what they've been doing. Like the sacrifices to their people and to their land and to their country, all their sacrifices, people want to throw that out the window just to like move on, I guess, just because they're bored. And I don't get it.
I absolutely agree with you, Andrew. Like everything you said, we don't always agree on everything. We argue a lot, but like everything you said on the stream, I completely agree with you on. So yeah. Does anyone else? Do we want to like wrap up this topic a little bit? Anyone else have any concluding thoughts? I thought Andrew did a pretty good job wrapping it up.
No, I think that was perfect.
Yeah. So real quick, I wanted to mention, I talked a little bit about the minerals deal. Colby, you wrote a piece for SEPA recently about the minerals deal. I just wanted to ask you, I don't know if you actually heard my piece, not trying to low-key ask you right now, I swear, but did you want to add anything about the minerals deal, or just like, should people go check out your article? Was my summary enough, or should they go read your article? I guess Colby stepped away for a moment. Oh, well. So yeah, Colby wrote a piece for SEPA about the new minerals deal. So yeah, I'll try to get the link up at some point for the chat. But yeah. I think we just should go to Q&A. Erlend, do you have any other topics you wanted to talk about before we do Q&A?
No, I see that there's a couple of questions.
Yeah. Do we have any other like things we're working on though? Just I did want to maybe mention about the midweek updates, as our editor said, and this is actually another Colby thing. It was Colby's idea, which was ask chat what we should do stuff on. So basically, hello chat, love you guys. What we kind of thought about, or at least I thought about, was the way we're doing content right now on YouTube. It's like we do this live stream and then we chop up the live stream. Sorry, sorry, Erlend, can you talk about the midweek update for one moment?
Yeah, so basically we decided to, instead of posting segments from the live stream in the midweek, Joseph is going to try and do some midweek updates, and we might also release some other midweek videos from some of the analysts here. We'll see if that's gonna spin the channel a little bit better, because we've been not favored very well by YouTube. Anyways, I think we had one question for Andrew that I wanted to ask you. It was about the train strikes that Ukraine struck. Oh, there it is, from Matthew. Matthew asks, I saw on a Twitter thread that Ukraine finally targeted, or for only the second time, a railway junction about 20 kilometers from the front. Is that true, Andrew? And I guess also, have you seen more of this, more than what has been reported?
Honestly, I haven't been paying attention to that sort of thing recently. Yeah, I have heard about this attack. I don't really know much about it, to be honest. I've been focusing on other stuff. I have a big backlog. Most of what I've been looking at is from like early April. So anyways, yeah, I can't really answer it, to be honest. Ask me in like a month when I catch up.
Okay, well, and it's certainly true that Ukraine hasn't focused on this.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's necessarily going to make any big difference, because the Russians tend to repair railway very quickly.
Yeah, that's the problem with railways, where, you know, we've seen in the past, you know, Ukraine would blow up a giant railway, like, you know, like a bridge, like not like a big bridge, but like, you know, like a 20-meter bridge, like that size. And Russia had it up and running like 4 hours later. Like they repair this stuff so quickly that unless you're destroying like a very significant like suspension bridge or something, I don't think it really makes a difference. And even then, Russia's at the point where they don't really care about things like property rights or human welfare or anything like that. They'll just, you know, build a new rail like parallel to the old one in a way that they don't need a bridge anymore. And then what? So
Yeah, no, and even I think most of the destroyed railway has been done by some sabotage in inside Russia, or even in occupied territories by partisans, and the results have been unfortunately not very. It hasn't had any impact, mainly because they repair it quickly. So yeah.
I think the best case of railway destruction that I can remember is there was one point where I can't remember what town it was, but it was in Luhansk somewhere. There was a train with equipment on it, like BMP3s or something, and Ukraine blew up a bridge right in front of that train, so I had to stop. And then I believe they shot it with a Gimli. So I think that was like the most successful bridge blowing up. But even still, like they just repaired the bridge and went back to normal afterwards. But I think off the top of my head, that was like probably the most successful bridge blowing up, and even that didn't really achieve anything.
Ukraine has also done some very long-range FPV drone strikes against fuel trains, and to be honest, I think that's more effective.
the Kerch bridge, yeah.
Well, also the near Berdyansk, there was at least once a fuel train that was hit by FPV drones, most likely carried by these kind of mothership repeater drones. So I think those kind of things are more effective, but in the end, not a huge thing.
Yeah, I think like you said, the partisan ones, they're small. Obviously, I think they have an impact, but they're not really on the actual logistics. They delay things for maybe a day or something, but like it's more just like a morale thing, I think. But I think the way you would actually have an impact would be, one, you would need to take out enough in the network to really cause an actual disruption. Like right now, if you take out one switching station or whatever you take out, like they can just redirect traffic around it. It's not that big a deal. But if you took out like several in a key choke point, you could theoretically, if you were smart about it, like really block things up, right? So that's one thing. If they were smarter and did it on a slightly larger scale. The other option would be if you did it on such a scale where it became difficult to source the equipment to replace all that electronics that they're burning. And then the other one you already mentioned, which is hit a fuel train because it goes pop. But yeah, those are the three ways you have a real impact with trains, I think.
Okay, I guess we lost Colby, but there was a question about, or actually, I have a question about these missiles for HIMARS or M270s go, and there was some really bad interpretation about what this meant. Someone said that they were sending 120 ATACMS or something. Do you have anything more on that? Would you be able to clarify what actually is happening?
Well, in my interpretation, they just sent standard gymnasts, right? I mean, it's a donation from German stocks. You know that Germany doesn't own ATACMS, and based on what was it again, Ottawa Convention or something, right? So yeah, it can't be ATACMS, and must be standard gymnasts. We have other artillery rockets, but they have a range of 38 kilometers, and the article mentioned long range. So I don't think they mean this. So yeah, standard ammunition for HIMARS.
Yeah, good. And then Calendon asks us, and I think here is it's going to be difficult to answer the question, but Callan asks us: is there a point where Ukraine is most self-reliant with respect to weapon production, or is it unrealistic for certain kits? And certainly, it is completely unrealistic that Ukraine will be able to be completely self-reliant on, for instance, air defense missiles. But it might make some difference that they will convert existing missiles or even produce something new. But self-reliant, Colby, maybe you want to answer that question. I think it seems very unlikely.
Yeah, I mean, I can take a stab at it, and if Colby comes back, I mean, like it seems like they're definitely making a strong effort to source as much production as they can in Ukraine. I forget the actual numbers, but the Ukrainians are keeping track of all these numbers and they report them pretty regularly. And I want to say it's about 2/3 of the weapons now they're saying are domestically produced, like on the front line. I don't know how they calculate that. I'm sure that there's lots of ways you could calculate that and argue about it. But I would guess if we're talking in like the long term, Ukraine probably does want domestic production for a lot of systems, just because they're generally cheaper to produce in Ukraine than what they can buy abroad. The issue is just obviously they don't have that production right now. And I think the other issue potentially is that they are being bombed a lot, which sucks, right? So for production, as far as that goes. So but so far it seems like they have managed to get weapons production up in certain key areas like drones and other fields, and they've managed to decentralize production enough that even if Russia can hurt it, it's not a deal breaker for the production numbers. And it looks like they still can produce systems cheaper than what Europe can get them. So I would guess, let's say over the course of the next 10 years, Ukraine is going to aim to get the vast majority of its systems domestically produced for self-defense. But we're probably going to not see, I would say optimistically 90%, maybe realistically 80%, right, would be the goal there. You're never going to be able to produce everything yourself, but that would be my guess. I'm trying to think of any areas where they wouldn't. I think the main one would be an airframe. That's just going to be too expensive. Even though Ukraine can make engines, that's going to be too crazy. But that's probably outside of airframes. I think they're going to have a missile. They're going to have their own missiles. They're going to have their own, at some point, air defense. I think you got to be crazy to be Ukrainian defense planners and not try to make your own air defense systems at this point, right? So I would guess like 80 to 90%, but I don't know. What do you guys? Maybe I'm crazy.
I think right now, outside of air defense and airplanes, like I don't even think about those, to be honest. Outside of those two, the most glaring weakness that Ukraine has is tanks. Ukraine really needs to be able to make tanks, and right now they have like basically no capability of doing it. They can repair tanks.
Like there's no plan in production. Like they've talked about like we're making missiles. They're not saying we're making a new tank, right? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, they all of the factories they have to make tanks are in places where you can't make tanks, like Kharkiv and whatnot. So, but it's really one of their biggest weaknesses is not being able to make tanks. So they can make MRAPs. They can make SPGs. They're making towed guns, and that's all really good. Like especially their artillery, their ability to manufacture artillery in pretty large numbers, by the way, is fantastic because they need a lot of artillery. But they can't make tanks, and tanks are really one of the biggest bottlenecks that they face outside of air defense and airframes. So and there's really no solution to tanks, which is the unfortunate thing, because Europe isn't making tanks either, and the US isn't really making tanks. Like no one's making tanks, and it's bad. Like it's Ukraine really needs tanks, and they developed a fantastic tank. The T-84 would be a great tank for this war. Like if they could actually produce it, it would fit all of the needs of the Ukrainian military very well. It does everything that they need, but they can't produce it because their factories are in terrible positions. So it's really probably one of their biggest needs, and I don't have any idea how they could possibly solve it, but it's something to just look at, I guess.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's not something that you can easily scale up production on. And as you said, like Europe's really not doing it. The US really isn't doing it. The US could part with some tanks if they really wanted to, but no one's actually like building new ones in any meaningful quantities that I'm aware of. So
Yeah, especially not the sort of tank that Ukraine needs. Ukraine needs like a cheap tank that you can mass produce, not like, $30 million Abrams or whatever.
right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. That was an interesting topic of discussion. Yeah, Mr. Colby says his internet's not going great for him, which is unfortunate. Someone mentions, do they not have any coke steel since they lost it to the Russians? They still can make steel, as far as I understand. The issue is that they need to now import coal from the United States in order to make the steel, which makes it more expensive to make and is really like I want to say crippling, but like slowing down or stagnating their steel industry a bit to make it so expensive when it used to be so cheap to just get coal from Ukraine. Does anyone else know about the state of their steel industry?
No clue.
Yeah. Obviously, losing Azovstal was a huge blow, but as far as I know, it was maybe like 20% of their steel production. So they still have a lot of steel production. The issue right now, though, is they can't source coal for it cheaply like they used to. Sorry, go ahead.
Didn't they make like mild steel and stuff? Like I'm not sure how much that impacts.
Yeah, I think so. They like rolled steel and stuff. I don't know. But yeah, I'm definitely not an expert in the world of steel. But yeah, like Ukraine has steel to make tanks, but it'd be tough to make a new tank. Andrew's right though. It's something that should be considered. Is like obviously the tanks. We're not saying that the existing tanks are bad, but I think Andrew's right that in this war you would need a mass-produced tank that in quantity, and no one's really considering that right now. Go ahead.
They don't even necessarily need that many tanks. Like if they were making like 20 a month, that would probably be fine. And 20 a month isn't that many.
Yeah, you look at their success with the Bodana, right? As you mentioned, it's a very good artillery piece. It's now, as far as we know, like one of the, if not the most mass-produced artillery piece in the world. And they've managed to, they say their production's resilient, and it appears to be, in terms of the Russians can't hit their production and hurt it. So yeah, sorry, go ahead.
But yeah. So yeah, if like the Bodana, I don't know, I think they're making like 20 or 30 a month or something. It's I honestly don't know how that works, because they're making both the SPG and Toad variant. I'm not sure how that splits out or how much is of each. So yeah, if they're making roughly that many tanks, like not even, like maybe half as many tanks as they're making Bogdanas, they would be fine. Like they don't need to be making like thousands of tanks. They just like one a day, maybe, like not even. Like they just need to be able to replace their losses, because they're losing tanks every day. So and they're not getting more tanks, really. Like the T-72s in Europe are basically spent at this point. And after that, like they got some like Leopard 1s. I don't know how many more Leopard 1s there are. I doubt there's not many more. And Leopard like 2A4s and stuff. I don't know how many more of those there are. Like Europe is like running out of tanks, and yeah, like I don't know where they're gonna get replacements. So like it's gonna be kind of weird, because you're gonna end up with an army that has plenty of MRAPs, but like no tanks to go with it. And I know like a lot of people look down on tanks these days, because you constantly see tanks explode. But tanks are incredibly important, like really, really important. And the IFVs is like another issue, but it's nowhere near as bad as the tank problem, because you can, like, IFVs are in production, and so like you could buy like CV90s and stuff. So that's not nearly as big a problem as tanks, because just no one's making the tanks right now. Like Germany's making like so few tanks. It kind of feels like they're just trying to keep the factory open. And yeah, I don't know.
It would be enormously beneficial if Ukraine could make significant numbers of IFVs as well, though. Like, yes, they're receiving IFVs, but nowhere near what they need. So,
oh yeah, it's nowhere near. But at least it's not like like the IFV situation is so much better than their tank situation. like in the like Ukraine has a pile of tanks, and they're probably never going to get more than that. That's their tank situation.
I just want to point out that I don't know if this situation has changed, but less than a year ago, Ukrainian officials said they have a greater need in infantry fighting vehicles than in main battle tanks.
Yeah, yeah. I kind of feel that's more coming from a sentiment of people don't like tanks anymore, more so than the need for tanks going away, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Like people just like Bradleys, you know. They're like, if you could give us like 5,000 Bradleys, that'd be great.
yeah,
But
yeah. Okay. No, they just talked about that, right? With who was it? I believe Kamishin. Who was it? Who talked with like some German newspapers about it, because there was this discussion when Rheinmetall basically said you can choose like what are we going to localize in Ukraine, right? And they said we need infantry fighting vehicles, not main battle tanks. Main battle tanks can come later. And yeah, just wanted to point that out.
yeah, well, I think that is smart, right? But I think Andrew has 2 points here, which are both correct, which doesn't necessarily, it's not mutually exclusive to your point, which is like infantry fighting vehicles are probably more important in terms of like just as a basic function on the battlefield right now. But I think Andrew's pointing out that there is a sort of a solution in place or efforts being made to address that situation. And in the world of tanks, they're really, sorry, not a plug for the game. I wish we were sponsored by them. That's not happening in the same way. And then the other issue is that, yes, the Germans make great tanks, but they're very expensive, and it's not feasible to produce one a day, right, in terms of cost. So that's the issue there. We need an affordable tank that is in mass production. I think that's the conundrum. And
Is there anywhere in the world an affordable tank in mass production?
Well,
I don't know how Russia
they're making T90s.
Yeah, maybe Russia, maybe, probably not, because it's so corrupt.
Well, they lie about how many T90s they make. They probably make half as many as they say. But even making half as many as they say is quite a bit. It's a bit of, if Ukraine were making as many T90s as Russia is, Ukraine would be very happy about that.
Yeah. Anyway, I think it was an interesting discussion. Do you guys have any final thoughts on the whole tank thing? Andrew is a good rabbit hole. We got any other questions in chat, Mr. Erlend?
Not really. Those were. Well, no, there's a. Yeah, well, this is a funny question, and we actually talked about this before, Andrew. Not on stream though, but if you ever consider looking for help in places like GeoGuessr live streamers, and I mean, potentially
you want to
some
play
of them,
hardcore Iron Man GeoGuessr kid.
I guess potentially some of them could have, skills that would be possible to convert. But Andrew, what's your take on it?
Well, okay, so the way geoguessing works is you basically memorize the reference images on Google, right? So, and the more you memorize, the better you get at it. It's really a memorization game. And that's kind of true. Like, that's true in Ukraine too. It's also a memorization game, but it's not memorizing Google Map. It's memorizing tens of thousands of video clips. so that's slightly different. And the other thing is that we don't strive to get within a few kilometers. We strive to get within a few meters of where the thing happened. So it's a level of precision difference. But I'm sure if you're good at it, you can do it. And also the other thing is that in geoguessing, it's really more focused on first-person perspectives of the landscape and whatnot, and of cities and roads and stuff. Whereas what we're doing is a lot more bird's eye view, like looking down at a map. So that's another difference.
Yep.
I love the idea that we make like a Last Starfighter GeoGuessr game that is secretly a recruitment tool for Andrew. That's incredible. Do you guys ever see Last Star? It's a super old reference now. I have to remember that I'm old, but like Last Starfighter was like a movie in the 80s. A kid plays like an arcade game, and then like it turns out that the arcade game was engineered by aliens to find like the best pilot among the Earthicans, so that he can go fight the aliens. And we could do that with the GeoGuessr. We just make an innocent little GeoGuessr game that's secretly Andrew's a tool to recruit for Andrew.
Okay, next question. Sorry about that, Joseph. So Matthew, this is something we have pretty good response to, I would say. How is the Russian ISR situation? Other than that HIMARS loss, I haven't seen as many deep strikes being videoed. By the way, I'm not sure if it is 100% verified that it was a HIMARS that was lost. It is possible, but I haven't seen 100% evidence. Anyways, last week we did a stream with Come Back Alive where they talked about the Dronefall initiative, and we also had Artem, which is geolocating all the FPV interceptions of Russian ISR drones. And yeah, first of all, I would recommend going and listen to that and watch that stream. And second of all, their ISR capability has been heavily limited by the Dronefall initiative and also the other fundraising initiatives that have ended up into this new way of intercepting drones. So yeah, this is, by the way, Artem's layer on Andrew's map, where all the geolocated interceptions are fairly up to date, at least, right? You pretty recently updated this, didn't you, Andrew?
Yes, it was updated the day before that Dronefall interview.
So it's a week old, but still, you will see interceptions on the map as well, day by day. So go and check out that. And Andrew is updating this map every day, and Artem is contributing with geos more or less every day, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
Although the backlog makes it hard, okay?
Yeah.
He does give every day, but sometimes it takes a few days for it to post.
Yeah, so I mean, this is just insane how much data is collected just on this one. Oops, what happened there? On this one layer, and it really shows that the Russian ISR capabilities has been heavily impeded. I would say that doesn't mean they don't have drones. They definitely have drones because they keep sending them in, and they do have certain capabilities. They can fly at least a little bit, but they can't fly as freely as they did before, which was very problematic.
Yeah, and in a sense, this program is a failure because there was a hope that if you shot down enough drones, that Russia would trend to zero over time, and that has proven to be incorrect. Instead, what Russia has done is they do not fly as freely, and they have accepted that drones are basically single-use consumable items, and every time you throw one up, it's going to get shot down, and they've accepted that. And unfortunately, they're able to accept that and continue flying the missions they want to fly. And presumably, if something is very important to them, they will send multiple drones out, maybe on different courses or whatever, to get to that mission that they want, which, to look at a building or whatever the mission is. So they're capable of doing that, basically. The limiting factor to shooting down drones is not necessarily Ukraine, it's more Russia. So when Russia throws up a drone, Ukraine can mostly reliably shoot it down. Not every time, but mostly. But obviously, they can't shoot down a drone that Russia doesn't fly. So if Russia flew more, Ukraine could shoot down more. That's what I'm trying to say. So,
Yep.
so Russia is getting to like this point where they can fly as many as they want to fly, accepting that they'll all get shot down. There are some other things that are interesting, though. Russia is flying worse drones and older drones.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you make of that? It's hard to interpret what that means. It in one hand, you could the optimistic interpretation is that they've run out of their better drones. A pessimistic interpretation would be maybe their better drones are getting harder to shoot down. Maybe their better drones are surviving more, and we're only seeing the weaker drones get shot down. I don't think that's true, but possible. They could also be producing better drones to use later and using the weaker drones now as a stopgap for whatever future mission they're planning. And it could also be that they just learned that the weaker drones are fine and they don't need the better ones.
Yep. They might be just looking at the economy of things. And we saw recently, I think, a civilian variant of the Sala, wasn't it? That is mainly used for like looking out for fires in forested areas. So that has been intercepted, and kind of a new thing. Also, lots of other weird drones popping up. I think Artem wanted to start looking into those and just posting some small videos about these weird drones that he's seeing sometimes. One thing that I think is very positive about this is that we might finally actually get more reliable way to intercept the Shahed type drones. Hopefully that will happen soon.
Also of note, Russia is publishing tons of videos shooting down Ukrainian drones.
Yeah. Not as many, but they do post those kind of videos too.
Yep. We had a compilation last night that I didn't feel like watching, to be honest, but it was like 20 or something that they shot down. So,
Mr. Colby, do you read me?
I read you. Do you read me?
I read you, sir. Hello, Mr. Colby. I just wanted to ask, I did a little brief thing on the mineral deal at the very beginning of the stream, but you recently wrote an article for SIPA, of course, about it. Did you want to maybe talk a little bit about that? And we put the link in the chat if you want to see it. Yeah, go ahead, Colby.
Yeah, thanks. It's a pretty short piece, so if people are interested in the topic, I just encourage them to give it a quick read. Basically, at a high level, I would basically say that I think that it's pretty much the best outcome that Ukraine could have reasonably expected under the current circumstances, with the Trump administration being what it is and the approach that they've taken. And what I hear from Ukrainians themselves is that they are feeling fairly positive as of late about the state of relations between their country and the Trump administration in the United States. So I think that there's potential here for sort of a new model of security cooperation, but we'll kind of have to wait and see how that unfolds over the coming months. Obviously, this kind of ties in with the ceasefire question as well, and what happens with that in the next week. So these are all very linked issues, but I would say that there's definitely more momentum in Ukraine's side on sort of the big picture. But as we've been discussing, there's still a lot that we're doing wrong in our entire approach, and just the fundamental problem since the beginning of the war has just been a total lack of strategy on our part from most of the main Western capitals, and really it's just a very small handful of countries that have been fairly clear-eyed about the stakes here And basically everybody else's approach just continues to be, we want to have our cake and eat it too. So there's all these lofty statements about supporting Ukraine, but still extremely modest commitments in security assistance, very modest commitments in country's own rearmament programs, because nobody wants to actually put up serious money, with few exceptions. And until we have some fundamental changes in the tangible actions getting taken across a broad swath of countries and topics, then we're not going to see any sort of dramatic shift in outcome on the battlefield.
Yeah, thanks, Colby. So if chat, you want to check out this article, I think it's worth checking out. SIPA, of course, a very prestigious think tank. You want to maybe give us a little rundown on SIPA, Colby?
Center for European Policy Analysis, based in Washington, D.C., writes on transatlantic relations, has all sorts of different people providing commentary, and they do good work. General Hodges is a SIPA alum. There's all sorts of different people from both sides of the Atlantic that are that write and contribute and work there. So it's I appreciate that they have extended me the opportunity to provide commentary for their Europe's Edge program. So.
Yeah, very reputable. I was very familiar with them before you started contributing. So yeah, very congratulations, Colby, on working with SIPA. Very proud of that. And we have a couple of other SIPA alums hanging around Tochnyi, so we're very happy about that. We're very supportive of their work, and we're happy to work with some of the contributors that they have. Cool. What was the other thing I was going to mention? Erlend. There was something else. There was something else we had cooking.
I mentioned the fact that we might release some midweek videos, standalone videos, instead of doing the chopped up live stream.
Yeah, good. So yeah, chat, if you guys have any ideas or requests, I guess, like I'm going to be doing like a midweek video. So yeah, guess send your ideas. We're always excited. That was another good Colby idea. Like many ideas around here, Colby goes, why don't you just ask chat what they want?
Hey,
yeah.
Colby got another question. Matthew asks, since Colby is here, will the Canadians' new government spend more aid to Ukraine, or will it be the same as before, with mostly just statements?
I'm not holding my breath. I don't think there's no indication so far that there's going to be any significant change in the government's approach to Ukraine. But we'll see. The Parliament's not even sitting yet. So I mean, the Canadian government, they need to pass a budget at some point in time, so that there could be more assistance made available to Ukraine. The Canadian military doesn't have very deep stocks to provide equipment to Ukraine. So anything we do is going to have to be more monetary contributions and going out to contract for different things. So I'd be very surprised if we see very significant contributions, but it's possible. So hopefully they do something. But I'm not holding my breath right now.
Jump on the Danish model, maybe.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's the easy thing to do, is just provide more financing for their own defense industrial base. But also, we should be leveraging our own defense industrial base, which is very underutilized, to get more assistance to Ukraine through that channel. I mean, we have Rochelle here, which has provided a lot of armored vehicles to Ukraine, but the vast majority of those were not financed by the Canadian government, and they have a lot of untapped capacity still. So that's very, very low hanging fruit for the government to come in with a very large monetary commitment to Ukraine. They could just buy a bunch of these vehicles to get the Ukrainian military fully motorized, because it is not fully motorized, and they're still very significant reliant on civilian transport, because there's just not enough military grade vehicles available. So this is something that we could make a pretty big, significant contribution towards, is just financing armored vehicles for Ukraine from our own defense industrial base, and then also providing that support to their defense industrial base. Those are the two very easy things that the government could and should be doing, but has so far not had really any interest in doing that.
Yeah, thank you. Also, actually, very interesting question from Tericon. Are you getting a lot more footage that has been recorded from intercepted video link footage? And then he says, we always use these devices that display overhead drone video feeds. We paid $200 for the units. And that's true. There's a lot more of those, what they call drone detectors, but they are really doing both. They're intercepting the telemetry link to warn about drones overhead, but some of them are also actually being able to display unencrypted video links. And I guess the question is for Andrew, if you've been noticing a difference there.
Asking, do we see intercepted video?
Yeah, I've seen
Because,
those
yes.
posts a little bit, but has there been an increase?
There's been an increase in published footage. I don't know if there's an increase in actual footage. Magyar, like every video Magyar posts at this point has like 30 seconds of intercepted footage at the end. It's just kind of like, he's like, hey, why not throw in like 30 seconds of it? And there's other video of it. Yes. I think like 2 days ago, we had like a 3-minute long video that was just all intercepted drone video. Yeah. And we've seen some instances where they will show an intercepted footage from the moment the drone takes off until the moment it hits, and then they will show them hitting where the drone took off, like if you know what I mean. So it's like
Yeah.
So yeah, we've seen this sort of footage, but I don't know if it's increased in how often it happens. I just kind of assume they've been doing it the whole time. Like, I don't know, but yeah, there's more published footage for sure.
One thing I know for sure is that these devices are definitely they're more proliferated than before, and they're easier to get, cheaper, and more reliable. So I would expect that there would be more footage. I just haven't really looked into this myself. Good question.
There was a really interesting video yesterday or the day before where it was a Russian drone, took off, and it was flying a little bit, and then just the battery died and it fell out of the sky. I wasn't like, I assumed that the battery was just a junky battery, like battery failure. I guess it happens. Like, I don't know how frequently, but every once in a while your battery just dies. But that was an interesting footage. One of the more interesting footages, I think.
So if I understood you guys, this is a device that can track a drone signal with the telemetry of it, and then also it can see the video feed of the drone. So you can't actually like control the drone, but you can see what it's doing and you know where it is if you have this device.
Yep. And so there are unencrypted video links. There's a lot of it out there. And if you have a device that can receive a signal within the range, the right frequency range, in theory, you can then display the video. And those devices exist. They basically just pop up the video immediately when there is an available signal that they can display.
Gotcha.
And it also has like warning sounds for certain drones. So yeah, pretty interesting pieces of kit, and very useful, both for people that are living in areas like Kherson, civilians, people that do aid work by these as well, but especially, of course, people on the front lines. And I've seen several videos where Ukrainians are filming that they're watching an intercept, and then they actually do you remember this video, Andrew, where they were inside a house and they were like, "Oh shit, that's our house," and then
Yeah.
they were unharmed, but man, that was scary.
I've also seen Ukraine was tracking an FPV drone and they shot it down with another FPV drone. So they're like watching through the eyes of the Russian FPV of their own FPV shooting them down.
This war just has a completely different dimension when it comes to the whole drone warfare thing than most people would actually know. Even if you've read a lot about it, that there's so many different things that is happening all the time in developments. It's crazy. Yeah, so I hope that answered your question.
It's an interesting topic. Thanks for the question. Do we have anything else we want to cover, Erlend, or should we wrap it up?
Yeah, I think we're done.
I think so too. So yeah, I guess like one other thing, item of business is I would encourage people to watch last week's stream if you missed it, right?
Sorry?
I said one thing before we wrap up is I would encourage people to watch last week's stream if they missed it. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. There was a fountain of knowledge coming from Taras there, and also from Artem. He made some really good questions. So did Federico. It was really, really interesting to listen to. I listened to it back to just, when you're on the stream, it's hard to get all the information that is being.
It was a lot. It was a
Yeah.
lot. It's you probably want to listen to it in parts, maybe.
Yeah, that's true. But the program is amazing, and I think the guys at Comeback Live they deserve a lot more attention than they get. So yeah, I would absolutely recommend to go watch that stream if you're interested in drones and in general in the war in Ukraine.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. So yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks, of course, to our illustrious panel. We had a very luxurious panel this week. Thank you to Mr. Colby. Thank you to Mr. Andrew for joining us. So you guys, of course, are welcome anytime. We know you're both very busy, and we appreciate you taking your time out. I guess thanks to Mr. German AT Ukraine and Erlend. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you guys, as always, for holding down the fort with me. Thank you, of course, to our illustrious chat. You guys are always great. We appreciate all your excellent questions. We appreciate you guys helping us out, liking the stream, spreading the word. We know you guys are really big help, and you're the reason that YouTube, who we've not had the best approach to dealing with, even lets us exist at all. So thanks so much for all your support. And of course, if you can't make the stream, we always appreciate you guys who tune in later. Appreciate you too. So thanks for everyone for tuning in. We will, of course, I'll see you on Wednesday with another Tochnyi update, but we'll see you live for the stream once again on Sunday at 2100 Kyiv time. And thanks again to everyone, and Slava Ukraini.
Heroям слава.
On behalf of the brave.